I woke up that February morning to find a certified letter shoved into my mailbox from the Riverside Pines Homeowners Association in Boulder, Colorado. And I knew my day was about to get complicated. The letter, signed by Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, informed me that I was in violation of Section 8.4 of the community bylaws regarding snow removal. According to Patricia's interpretation, I was required to remove all snow from my property within 48 hours of any snowfall exceeding 3 inches. The problem was not my driveway or walkway, which I had diligently cleared. No, Patricia had decided that all snow included the second-story deck attached to my bedroom. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the letter in disbelief. My name is Zachary Wilson, and I had lived in this townhouse for 3 years without anyone ever mentioning deck snow removal. The deck was 15 feet off the ground, accessible only through my bedroom sliding door, and the snow up there posed absolutely no danger to anyone. It was not blocking any pathways, not creating ice hazards for pedestrians, and certainly not interfering with anyone else's property. I called my neighbor Tom, who had lived in the community for 8 years. "Have you ever heard of anyone being required to clear snow from their second-story deck?" I asked him. Tom laughed. "Are you serious? No, man, that is completely ridiculous. Patricia is just flexing again. She does this every winter, finds some new interpretation of the rules to bother someone about. What should I do? Honestly, most people just ignore her first letter. She usually backs off after making her point that she is watching. But I had a feeling this was different. Patricia Henderson had been at war with me since the previous summer, when I had questioned her decision to impose a special assessment for decorative lampposts that nobody wanted. I had organized a petition among the homeowners, and while we had not succeeded in blocking the assessment, we had delayed it and forced the HOA board to justify their spending. Patricia had not forgotten that. The letter stated that if I did not comply within 72 hours, I would face a fine of $100 per day until the violation was corrected. That got my attention. At that rate, I could be looking at thousands of dollars in fines over the course of the winter. I decided to call Patricia directly, hoping to reason with her. Her phone rang 4 times before she answered. Patricia Henderson. "Hi, Patricia, this is Zachary Wilson. I just received your letter about snow removal." "Yes, Mr. Wilson, I trust you will address the violation promptly." "I wanted to clarify what exactly you are asking for. You want me to clear the snow from my second-story deck." "That is correct. The bylaws are very clear about snow removal requirements. But Patricia, that deck is 15 feet in the air. It is not accessible except through my bedroom. The snow up there is not bothering anyone. The bylaws do not make exceptions based on convenience, Mr. Wilson. All property owners are expected to maintain their properties according to the standards set forth in our governing documents." "Can you show me specifically where in the bylaws it says I need to clear snow from an elevated deck?" Section 8.4 states that all walkways, driveways, patios, and decks must be cleared of snow within 48 hours of snowfall exceeding 3 inches. That section is clearly referring to ground-level areas that affect pedestrian safety. That is your interpretation. The board has interpreted it to include all decks, regardless of elevation. The violation stands, Mr. Wilson. You have 72 hours. She hung up. I sat down and actually read through the entire HOA bylaws, all 47 pages of poorly written legalese. Section 8.4 was indeed vague enough that someone determined to be difficult could interpret it Patricia's way, though any reasonable person would understand it referred to areas that actually affected community safety and access. The next day, I attended the scheduled HOA board meeting. Patricia sat at the head of the table in the community clubhouse, flanked by two other board members. Gary Mitchum, a retired accountant who generally went along with whatever Patricia said, and Susan Rodriguez, who occasionally pushed back on Patricia's more extreme positions. I waded through the discussion of budget items and architectural review requests until we reached the open forum portion where residents could raise concerns. I would like to discuss the snow removal requirement, I said. Patricia did not look up from her papers. Your violation has been documented, Mr. Wilson. If you have a formal complaint, you may submit it in writing. I am submitting it verbally right now. I believe the board is misinterpreting Section 8.4. That provision was clearly intended to address safety concerns related to ground-level walkways and access points, not decorative second-story decks. Susan Rodriguez looked interested. That is a fair point. Patricia, when did we start enforcing deck snow removal for elevated decks? The bylaw has always been in effect, Patricia said sharply. We are simply ensuring consistent enforcement. But have we ever required this before? Susan pressed. Whether or not we have enforced it in the past does not change the fact that it is in the bylaws. Actually, I interjected, selective enforcement is a real legal issue. If the HOA has never enforced this rule before and you are suddenly enforcing it against only me, that could be considered discriminatory. Patricia's face flushed. Are you threatening legal action, Mr. Wilson? I am pointing out that your interpretation seems both unreasonable and selectively applied. I would like the board to reconsider. Gary Mitchum cleared his throat. The bylaws do say all decks. But is it reasonable? Susan asked. How is Zachary even supposed to safely clear snow from a second-story deck? That seems like a safety hazard in itself. That is Mr. Wilson's concern to address, Patricia said. He chose to purchase a property with a second-story deck. He is responsible for maintaining it according to our standards. This discussion is over. The violation stands. I left the meeting frustrated but not surprised. Patricia had made up her mind, and she had enough support from Gary to push it through. Susan was only one vote. When I got home, I found another letter in my mailbox. This one informed me that I now had only 48 hours remaining to comply, and that the daily fine would begin accruing if I failed to do so. Patricia was not wasting any time. I spent that evening researching Colorado HOA law. I learned that while HOAs had broad authority to enforce their bylaws, they also had obligations to be reasonable and consistent. I found several cases where homeowners had successfully challenged HOA actions based on selective enforcement or unreasonable interpretations of rules. However, actually fighting this in court would cost thousands in legal fees, far more than just paying the fines. The next morning, I stood in my bedroom staring at the deck through the sliding glass door. About 8 inches of snow covered the deck, pristine and undisturbed. The deck itself was maybe 12 feet by 8 feet with a railing around it. It was purely decorative. I had never used it, even in summer. It was too small to put furniture on, and it faced the parking lot rather than any scenic view. The smart thing to do would be to just shovel it. I could carefully go out there with a snow shovel and push the snow off the sides, letting it fall to the ground below. It would take maybe 20 minutes, but something about the principle of it bothered me deeply. Patricia was abusing her authority to harass me, and if I just complied, she would know she could push me around whenever she wanted. That afternoon, I received a phone call from an unknown number. "Is this Zachary Wilson?" a woman asked. "Yes." "Hi, my name is Amanda Ellis. I live over in Building C. I heard about your situation with the deck snow removal, and I wanted you to know you are not alone. Patricia sent me a similar letter last month about something completely ridiculous. What was yours about? She said my window blinds were not an approved color. I have had these blinds for 2 years. She is just going around looking for things to write people up about. That is awful. A bunch of us have been talking. We think Patricia is out of control. She is driving down property values by making this community so unpleasant to live in. We want to organize a recall vote to remove her from the board. This was interesting. How many people are you talking about? At least 15 homeowners are seriously interested. We need 20% of the community to petition for a recall vote, which would be 32 households. I think we can get there. Count me in. Great. We are meeting tomorrow night at Sarah Chen's place in Building D. Can you make it? I will be there. I hung up feeling slightly better. At least I was not the only one dealing with Patricia's tyranny. But I still had the immediate problem of the deadline, which was now down to 36 hours. That night, I had an idea. If Patricia wanted me to clear the snow from my second-story deck, I would clear it, but I would do it in the most dramatic, over-the-top way possible. I would not just comply. I would make a spectacle that would show everyone in the community just how absurd Patricia's requirement was. I started researching professional rope access companies in the Boulder area. These were businesses that specialized in reaching difficult-to-access areas, using climbing equipment and techniques. They typically worked on commercial buildings, bridges, and other structures where traditional ladders or scaffolding were not practical. I found a company called Summit Access Solutions that operated out of Boulder. Their website showed technicians rappelling down the sides of office buildings to clean windows and perform maintenance. Perfect. I called them first thing the next morning. A friendly voice answered. Summit Access, this is Derek speaking. Hi, Derek. I have kind of an unusual request. I need someone to clear snow from my second-story deck using rope access techniques. There was a pause. Can you run that by me again? I explained the whole situation, the HOA requirement, the threat of fines, and my plan to comply in the most visible way possible. Derek laughed. Man, that is the most ridiculous thing I have heard in a while. But yeah, we can definitely do that. It would be total overkill, but if you are willing to pay for it, we will make it happen. How much would something like this cost? For what you are describing, probably around $500. That covers mobilization, setup, and the actual work, which should not take more than an hour total. Let us do it. When do you need this done? As soon as possible. I am up against a deadline from the HOA. How about tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock? Perfect. I spent the rest of the day feeling a mix of satisfaction and anticipation. This was going to be expensive, but the look on Patricia's face would be worth it. I also spread the word to the neighbors I was friendly with, letting them know that if they wanted to witness something entertaining, they should be around my building at 9 the next morning. That evening, I attended the meeting at Sarah Chen's townhouse. About 20 people showed up, far more than I expected. Sarah, a software engineer who had lived in Riverside Pines for 5 years, organized the meeting. Thank you all for coming, she started. I think we all know why we are here. Patricia Henderson has turned our HOA into her personal fiefdom, and it is time for a change. Everyone murmured in agreement. I have been documenting violations and fines that Patricia has issued over the past 2 years, Sarah continued. The pattern is clear. She targets people who have disagreed with her or questioned board decisions. Meanwhile, her friends on the board face no scrutiny whatsoever. Gary Mitchum's lawn has been brown and dead for 6 months, which is technically a landscaping violation, but has Patricia written him up? Of course not. What are our options? Someone asked. According to our bylaws, we can petition for a special election to recall board members. We need signatures from 20% of homeowners, which is 32 households. If we get that, a recall vote will be scheduled within 60 days. At that vote, a simple majority of those present can remove a board member. I am in, I said. Patricia is trying to fine me $100 a day for not clearing snow from my second-story deck. Several people laughed, but there was anger underneath it. That is exactly the kind of thing I am talking about, Sarah said. Unreasonable, vindictive enforcement. Who is in? Every hand in the room went up. Sarah had prepared a petition, and we all signed it that night. We also divided up the community, with each person agreeing to talk to specific neighbors to gather additional signatures. Sarah thought we could have 35 or 40 signatures within a week. I went home that night feeling hopeful. Between the rope access spectacle tomorrow and the growing momentum for Patricia's recall, maybe things were finally moving in the right direction. The next morning arrived cold and clear. I woke up early, excited despite myself. At 8:45, a white van with Summit Access Solutions printed on the side pulled into the parking lot in front of my building. Two technicians got out, both looking professional in bright orange safety gear. Derek, who I had spoken with on the phone, approached my door. He was in his early 30s, fit and competent looking. His partner, a younger guy named Kyle, started unloading equipment from the van. "You must be Zachary," Derek said, shaking my hand. "That is me. Thanks for doing this." "Are you kidding? This is the most fun job we have had in months. We are usually just doing boring window washing. This is way more interesting." Derek and Kyle set up their equipment with impressive efficiency. They anchored ropes to the sturdy railing of my deck, ran them through descending devices, and laid out their safety gear. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered in the parking lot, watching with curiosity and amusement. I noticed Tom recording everything on his phone. "This is going viral, man," he called out to me. At precisely 9 o'clock, Derek climbed over my deck railing and rappelled down to the parking lot, then climbed back up with all his gear. The crowd applauded. Then Kyle ascended to the deck from the ground, hauling up a specialized snow shovel. For the next 30 minutes, Kyle methodically cleared every bit of snow from my deck while secured by ropes and wearing a full climbing harness. He pushed the snow over the railing in controlled sections, making sure it did not land on anyone below. Derek supervised from the ground, managing the rope systems and ensuring safety protocols were followed. It was absolutely, completely, ridiculously unnecessary, and it was glorious. The crowd of onlookers grew to maybe 30 people. Everyone was laughing and taking photos. Someone started a slow clap when Kyle finished the last corner of the deck. That was when Patricia arrived. She pushed through the crowd, her face already red with anger. She was in her mid-50s, always impeccably dressed, her gray hair cut in that precise bob that seemed to be standard issue for HOA presidents nationwide. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. "Hi, Patricia," I said cheerfully. "I am complying with your snow removal requirement. As you can see, I have hired licensed professionals to safely clear the snow from my second-story deck. This is a mockery. No, this is compliance. You required me to clear the snow. I am clearing it. I took your safety concerns very seriously, so I hired rope access professionals to ensure the job was done without anyone getting hurt. You are making a spectacle. I am following the rules as you interpreted them." Derek, who had been coiling rope, walked over. "Is there a problem, madam?" "We are fully licensed and insured. All of our safety protocols meet OSHA standards." Patricia sputtered, looking for something to object to. "This is unnecessary. You could have just used a shovel. Actually, Derek said, maintaining his professional demeanor, for an elevated deck like this, rope access is the safest method. If Mr. Wilson had gone out there with a regular shovel, he could have slipped and fallen. Our method eliminates that risk entirely. I am going to report this to the board. Feel free, I said. But as of right now, my deck is clear. I am in full compliance with Section 8.4 as you interpreted it. I have photos and professional documentation from a licensed contractor, so you cannot find me. Patricia glared at me with pure hatred. You think you are so clever, Mr. Wilson, but you are still bound by this community's rules, and I will make sure they are enforced. I would expect nothing less, I replied. She stormed off, and the crowd burst into applause. Several neighbors came up to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to Patricia. The mood was celebratory, almost festive. Derek and Kyle packed up their equipment and I paid them, adding a generous tip. You guys were worth every penny. Anytime, Derek said with a grin. If she makes you do this again, give us a call. After they left, Tom came over still holding his phone. Dude, I posted that video online and it already has 5,000 views. People are loving this. Seriously. Yeah, everyone hates their HOA. This is like living out a fantasy. You are a hero, man. Over the next few days, Tom's video continued to spread. It was shared on Reddit, picked up by local news stations, and even featured on a national news website in an article about HOA overreach. I started getting interview requests from reporters. I agreed to talk to a journalist from the Boulder Daily Camera, who wrote an article about the situation. The article quoted me explaining the whole situation, included Patricia's justification for the rule enforcement, and featured opinions from HOA lawyers about whether the requirement was reasonable. One lawyer noted that while HOAs had broad authority to enforce rules, they also had a duty to interpret those rules reasonably and consistently. Another pointed out that requiring dangerous or extremely burdensome actions could potentially expose the HOA to liability. The article made Patricia look petty and vindictive, which was accurate. I felt a small twinge of guilt about the public embarrassment, but then I remembered the threatening letters and the $100 per day fines, and the guilt disappeared. 3 days after the rope access incident, I received another letter from the HOA. My heart sank as I opened it, expecting some new violation or fine. But this time, it was different. The letter informed me that my account was being charged $200 as reimbursement for the HOA's legal costs in consulting with an attorney about my compliance method. According to Patricia's letter, the board had needed to verify whether hiring rope access professionals constituted valid compliance, and they were passing that cost on to me. This was outrageous. I had complied with their requirement, and now they were trying to punish me financially anyway. I called Sarah Chen immediately. Sarah, they are charging me $200 for their legal consultation about whether my rope access compliance was valid. Can they do that? I have no idea, but it feels illegal, like retaliation. Let me call my real estate attorney friend. She might have insight. While I waited for Sarah to get back to me, I posted about the new charge on the community Facebook group. The response was immediate and angry. Multiple neighbors said they would refuse to pay such a charge if it were assessed to them. Someone suggested we all should stop paying HOA dues in protest until Patricia was removed. Sarah called back an hour later. My attorney friend says that is probably not legal. The HOA can pass legitimate shared costs on to homeowners through special assessments or dues, but they cannot charge individual homeowners for legal fees related to routine rule enforcement. That is supposed to come out of the general budget. She said you should definitely not pay it, and if they try to collect, you should file a complaint with the state HOA oversight office. There is a state oversight office. Apparently, Colorado has laws governing HOA conduct. They cannot just do whatever they want. Armed with this information, I wrote a detailed response to Patricia's letter, citing the relevant Colorado statutes and explaining why the charge was improper. I sent copies to all board members and kept detailed records of everything. Meanwhile, Sarah's petition was gaining momentum. Within 10 days, we had signatures from 41 households, well over the required 32. Sarah submitted the petition to the board at the next meeting, requesting a special recall election. Patricia accepted the petition with visible irritation. Under the bylaws, she had no choice. The recall vote was scheduled for 6 weeks out, giving everyone time to prepare. That was when things got really interesting. 2 weeks after the petition was submitted, I received a letter from a law firm representing the HOA. The letter stated that I was being sued for defamation and damage to the association's reputation because of my media interviews about the snow removal incident. I sat in my kitchen staring at the legal complaint, feeling sick. This was serious. I could not afford a lengthy legal battle. Even if I won, the legal fees could bankrupt me. I called every attorney I could find who specialized in HOA law. Most of them wanted retainers of $5,000 or more just to review the case. Finally, I found a lawyer named Michael Brennan who agreed to give me a free consultation. Michael was in his 40s, casually dressed with an office in a modest building near downtown Boulder. He listened to my whole story without interrupting, occasionally taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Okay, so first thing, do not panic. This lawsuit is almost certainly a slap suit. A what? Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It is when someone sues you not because they have a legitimate case, but to silence you and punish you for speaking out. Colorado has strong anti-slap laws. If we can show that their lawsuit is retaliatory and without merit, we can get it dismissed quickly, and they will have to pay your legal fees. Really? You have First Amendment rights to talk to the media about your experiences. Nothing you said was false or defamatory. You stated facts about what happened. The HOA is a semi-public organization exercising governmental-like authority over the community. You have every right to criticize them. So, what do? We file a motion to dismiss under Colorado's anti-slap statute. I can handle this for you. My fee will be $3,000 upfront, but once we win, the HOA will have to reimburse you for legal fees. So you will get that money back. $3,000 was a lot of money, but I did not see any alternative. Let us do it. Michael got to work immediately. Within a week, he had filed a detailed motion to dismiss, arguing that the HOA's lawsuit was a slap suit designed to punish me for protected speech. The motion included declarations from several neighbors supporting my version of events, copies of the media articles showing I had only stated truthful facts, and legal analysis of Colorado's anti-slap statute. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, right around the same time as the recall vote. Everything was coming to a head simultaneously. During this period, Patricia escalated her campaign against me. I received a violation notice for having my trash cans visible from the street for more than 2 hours after collection. Another notice claimed my front door wreath was not in approved colors. A third notice said my car was parked slightly over the line in my assigned space. Each violation came with threatened fines if not immediately corrected. It was transparent harassment, but it was also time-consuming and stressful to respond to each one with photos and detailed explanations. Other homeowners who had signed the recall petition started experiencing similar treatment. Sarah received a notice that her mailbox post needed repainting. Tom was cited for having a decorative garden gnome that violated aesthetic standards. Amanda Ellis got written up for her doormat being too large. The community was rallying together, though. Someone created a website documenting all of Patricia's vindictive enforcement actions. The local news did a follow-up story about the recall effort. The Denver Post picked up the story as an example of HOA dysfunction in Colorado. The day of the anti-SLAPP hearing arrived. I dressed in my best suit and met Michael at the Boulder County Courthouse. Patricia was there with the HOA's attorney, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit from a big Denver firm. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Richardson, reviewed both sides' briefs before the hearing. When we entered her courtroom, she got right to business. "I have reviewed the motion to dismiss and the response," she said. "Mr. Brennan, you are arguing this is a SLAPP suit?" "Yes, Your Honor." Mr. Wilson exercised his First Amendment rights to discuss his experiences with his homeowners association. Everything he said to the media was truthful and based on his personal experience. The HOA is suing him solely to punish him for speaking out and to discourage other homeowners from criticizing the board. "And the HOA's position?" Judge Richardson asked. The HOA's attorney stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Wilson's media campaign has damaged the association's reputation and made it harder to govern the community effectively. His statements were inflammatory and designed to cause trouble." "Were his statements false?" the judge asked. "That is not the relevant standard, Your Honor. Defamation can occur even with true statements if they are presented in a misleading context or with malicious intent." Judge Richardson looked skeptical. "Actually, truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Mr. Palmer, are you arguing that Mr. Wilson lied to the media?" "We are arguing that his presentation of the facts was designed to embarrass the association." "But were the facts he stated true or false?" Mr. Palmer hesitated. "The underlying facts are not disputed, but so he told the truth about what happened to him, and you are suing him for it." "Your Honor, the issue is more nuanced than it really is not," Judge Richardson interrupted. "I have read Mr. Wilson's media statements. He described receiving notices from the HOA, he described the requirements imposed on him, and he described how he chose to comply. All of that is documented fact. This is a textbook SLAPP suit." She flipped through the motion papers. "Moreover, I see a pattern here that troubles me. According to these declarations from other homeowners, the HOA board has begun targeting Mr. Wilson and anyone who signed a recall petition with multiple violation notices for minor issues. That is retaliatory conduct. Your Honor, the board has a duty to enforce the bylaws consistently," Mr. Palmer argued weakly. "Selective enforcement is actually the opposite of consistent enforcement," the judge said dryly. "Motion to dismiss is granted. This case is dismissed with prejudice. The HOA is ordered to pay Mr. Wilson's reasonable attorney fees and costs within 30 days. Additionally, I am ordering the HOA to cease all retaliatory enforcement actions against Mr. Wilson and any other homeowners who participated in the recall petition. If I see evidence of continued retaliation, I will consider sanctions." I could barely believe it. We had won completely. Mr. Palmer tried to salvage something. "Your Honor, we would request a stay of that order pending appeal." Denied. "This is not a close case, Mr. Palmer. I suggest your client focus on governing the community reasonably rather than pursuing vindictive litigation." Michael and I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Colorado sunshine. I felt lighter than I had in months. "That went well," Michael said with a satisfied smile. "Thank you so much. I cannot tell you how stressed I have been about this." The judge saw right through it. Slap suits almost never survive in Colorado when they are this blatant. You should get your legal fees back within a month. And the order about retaliatory enforcement, that is huge. If Patricia keeps harassing you or anyone else who signed the petition, she could be held in contempt of court. That would mean fines, possibly even jail time for her. She would be smart to back off. The recall vote was scheduled for the following week. After the court victory, momentum was strongly against Patricia. The judge's finding that the HOA had engaged in retaliatory enforcement had been reported in the local news, further damaging Patricia's credibility. On the evening of the recall vote, the community clubhouse was packed. Every seat was taken, with people standing along the walls. The energy in the room was electric. Under the bylaws, Susan Rodriguez, as vice president, had to conduct the recall vote meeting. Patricia sat at the front table looking furious but saying nothing. Susan called the meeting to order. "We are here for a special election pursuant to a valid petition for the recall of Patricia Henderson from the HOA Board of Directors. The petition has been verified as meeting all requirements. We will now hear from both sides, then proceed to a vote." Sarah Chen spoke first on behalf of the recall effort. She outlined Patricia's pattern of vindictive enforcement, the lawsuit that a judge had specifically called retaliatory, and the way Patricia had abused her authority to target homeowners who disagreed with her decisions. Then Patricia was given a chance to respond. She stood, her face tight with anger. "I have served this community faithfully for 6 years," she said. "Everything I have done has been to maintain our property values and ensure our bylaws are enforced fairly. Mr. Wilson and his allies are trying to undermine reasonable governance because they do not want to follow the rules that everyone agreed to when they bought their properties." Several people in the audience laughed, which only made Patricia angrier. "You can mock me all you want, but without proper enforcement, this community will fall into chaos. Property values will decline. Standards will disappear. You will regret this." She sat down and Susan called for the vote. The bylaws required a show of hands from all homeowners present. All in favor of recalling Patricia Henderson from the board of directors. A forest of hands went up immediately. I counted quickly, estimating at least 60 people voting yes. All opposed. About 10 hands rose, mostly people I recognized as Patricia's close friends. "The motion passes by an overwhelming majority," Susan announced. "Patricia Henderson is recalled from the board effective immediately. We will hold elections for her replacement within 30 days as required by the bylaws." Patricia stood up, grabbed her papers, and walked out without another word. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, relief, satisfaction, and a little bit of sympathy despite everything. She had brought this on herself, but it still had to hurt. After the meeting, Sarah, Tom, Amanda, and several other neighbors went to a local restaurant to celebrate. The mood was jubilant. "We actually did it," Sarah said, raising her glass. "We stood up to a bully and won." "Could not have done it without Zachary's rope access spectacle," Tom said. "That is what really got everyone's attention and made people realize how absurd Patricia had become." "I am just glad it is over," I said. "I was getting tired of documenting every little thing in case she tried to find me." Amanda smiled. "So what are you going to do with your deck now?" "Keep it clear. Honestly, I am going to let the snow pile up as high as it wants. That deck is useless anyway." Everyone laughed. Over the next month, things in Riverside Pines slowly returned to normal. Susan Rodriguez served as president temporarily until a new election could be held. She immediately rescinded all the petty violation notices that Patricia had issued in her final months, focusing the board's enforcement efforts on genuine community concerns like broken streetlights and needed repairs to common areas. The HOA's insurance company was not happy about the legal fiasco. According to Susan, they had sent a strongly worded letter to the board warning that the association's coverage could be at risk if they continued to pursue frivolous litigation. The insurance company also required the board to attend training on proper HOA governance. I received a check for $3,200 from the HOA, reimbursing my legal fees as the judge had ordered. It felt good to have that money back. The special election for Patricia's replacement drew 5 candidates, all of whom promised to govern more reasonably and focus on actual community needs rather than petty rule enforcement. A retired teacher named Barbara Mills won easily, running on a platform of common sense and communication. But I was not done with Patricia yet. About 6 weeks after her recall, I received a surprising phone call from a woman who identified herself as an investigator with the Colorado Division of Real Estate. "Mr. Wilson, I am calling about some allegations regarding your homeowners association. We have received complaints suggesting financial irregularities. As someone who has been involved with the HOA recently, I wanted to ask if you had noticed anything unusual. What kind of financial irregularities?" I cannot go into specifics of an ongoing investigation, but I can tell you we are looking into whether HOA funds were properly handled and accounted for. I thought about it. Patricia did push through that special assessment for decorative lampposts last year. At the time, several of us thought it was unnecessary and overpriced, but I do not know if anything illegal happened. You know approximately how much that project cost. The assessment was $500 per household. With about 160 households in the community, that would be $80,000 total. And were the lampposts installed? Yes, about 20 of them throughout the community. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. That is helpful information. After she hung up, I immediately called Sarah. I just got a call from a state investigator asking about HOA finances. I got the same call yesterday, Sarah said. I think someone reported Patricia for something. The investigator asked me about several of the special assessments and projects from the past few years. You think Patricia was stealing money? I do not know, but it would not surprise me. She had almost total control over the finances. Gary just rubber-stamped everything she wanted. Over the next 2 months, rumors swirled about the investigation. The state investigator interviewed multiple current and former board members and demanded financial records going back 5 years. Barbara Mills, the new board president, cooperated fully with the investigation and hired an independent accountant to review the HOA's books. The accountant's findings were damning. He discovered that over the previous 4 years, approximately $47,000 in HOA funds could not be properly accounted for. Invoices were missing. Some vendors could not be verified as legitimate, and several checks had been written to cash for vague purposes like community improvements with no supporting documentation. The lamppost project was particularly suspicious. The HOA had paid $82,000 total, including the special assessment and some reserve funds, but the actual cost of purchasing and installing 20 decorative lampposts should have been around $40,000. The contractor who supposedly did the work was a company that had no business license in Colorado and no online presence. Barbara Mills called a community meeting to present the findings. The room was packed again, but this time The mood was shocked and angry rather than celebratory. "I want to be clear," Barbara said. "These are preliminary findings and the state investigation is ongoing. However, it appears that significant funds were misappropriated during Patricia Henderson's tenure as president." "Are you saying she stole from us?" someone called out. "I am saying that funds cannot be properly accounted for, and there is evidence suggesting financial misconduct. The state investigator has referred the matter to the Boulder County District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges." The room erupted in conversation. People were angry, betrayed, and demanding answers. Tom raised his hand. "What happens to our money? Can we get it back?" "We are pursuing all available remedies," Barbara said. "The HOA has insurance that may cover some of the losses. We will also file a civil lawsuit against Patricia Henderson to recover the funds. Beyond that, if criminal charges are filed, restitution could be ordered as part of any sentence." I sat there feeling vindicated but also disturbed. Patricia had not just been a petty tyrant. She had apparently been stealing from all of us to fund who knows what. All those ridiculous rule enforcement actions, all the focus on minor violations, might have been partly designed to distract from her financial misconduct. 3 weeks later, the news broke that Patricia Henderson had been arrested and charged with theft, embezzlement, and fraud. The charges alleged that she had stolen approximately $47,000 from the HOA over a 4-year period through fake invoices, phantom contractors, and unauthorized cash withdrawals. The local news covered the story extensively, often mentioning the earlier rope access incident as context for the troubled HOA. Patricia's arrest photo showed her looking tired and defeated, nothing like the imperious HOA president who had terrorized the community. Her attorney tried to fight the charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, emails, and invoices all pointed to a systematic scheme to divert HOA funds for her personal use. Investigators discovered that some of the money had gone toward gambling debts, a revelation that shocked everyone who knew her. 8 months after her arrest, Patricia Henderson stood in a Boulder County courtroom for sentencing. She had eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges rather than go to trial. I attended the hearing along with Sarah, Barbara Mills, and several other homeowners. The prosecutor outlined the scope of Patricia's theft and the impact on the community. The defense attorney painted a picture of a woman struggling with gambling addiction who had made terrible choices. Judge Martinez, a different judge than the one who had handled my anti-SLAPP case, was not sympathetic. "Miss Henderson, you held a position of trust in your community. Your neighbors relied on you to manage their shared resources honestly. Instead, you systematically stole from them to support your gambling habit. This was not a one-time mistake. It was an ongoing criminal enterprise spanning years." He sentenced her to 4 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 2 years. He also ordered her to pay full restitution of $47,000 to the HOA, though everyone knew it was unlikely we would ever see that money. As Patricia was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Yes, she had made my life difficult with her petty enforcement actions and vindictive lawsuit. But seeing her headed to prison, her life essentially destroyed, was hard to watch. She had done it to herself, but it was still a tragedy. Outside the courthouse, reporters interviewed several of us. I kept my comments brief. I am glad that justice was served. The HOA board serves in a position of trust, and that trust was violated. Hopefully, this sends a message that financial misconduct will not be tolerated. Life in Riverside Pines slowly returned to normal after that. Barbara Mills proved to be an excellent board president, focused on actual community needs rather than petty rule enforcement. She reformed the HOA's financial procedures to require dual signatures on all checks, regular independent audits, and transparent reporting to homeowners. The HOA's insurance company ultimately paid $30,000 to cover part of the losses, reducing the financial impact on the community. We still had to do a small special assessment to cover the remaining shortfall and legal costs, but at least the wound was healing. As for my deck, I never cleared the snow from it again. No one ever asked me to. The absurd requirement that had started this whole saga was quietly forgotten, recognized for the unreasonable overreach it had always been. The following winter, we got another major snowstorm, even bigger than the one that had triggered Patricia's original demand. I stood in my bedroom looking at the deck as snow piled up nearly a foot deep. Tom texted me a photo of my deck from the parking lot with the caption, "Need me to call the rope guys?" I laughed and texted back, "I think we are good." The whole experience taught me important lessons about standing up to bullies, the power of community organizing, and the importance of accountability in positions of authority. It also taught me that sometimes the most effective form of protest is malicious compliance. Patricia wanted me to clear my deck, and I cleared it in the most spectacular way possible, exposing her unreasonableness for everyone to see. That rope access spectacle, expensive as it was, became the catalyst that united the community against Patricia's tyranny. It gave people the courage to speak up, to organize, and to demand better leadership. And ultimately, it helped uncover serious financial crimes that might have continued for years otherwise. Derek from Summit Access Solutions still sends me a Christmas card every year with a photo of Kyle clearing my deck. It has become kind of an inside joke between us. He tells me that video is still their most popular social media post and has actually brought them new business from people who love their creative approach to problems. Sarah Chen and I became good friends through the whole ordeal. She actually ran for the HOA board in the next regular election and won easily. She has been a voice of reason and transparency, working to make sure the mistakes of Patricia's era never happen again. The recall effort inspired similar movements in other HOAs around Boulder and beyond. Several news outlets did feature stories about HOA reform, using our community as a case study in how homeowners can effectively organize to remove bad leadership. Colorado even passed new legislation strengthening homeowner rights and increasing oversight of HOA finances. As for me, I am still living in Riverside Pines. I thought about moving after everything that happened, but I realized this is my home and my community. We fought for it, we improved it, and I am not going anywhere. Plus, my mortgage rate is great, and I really do not feel like dealing with moving trucks. My second-story deck remains gloriously useless and often covered in snow. Sometimes I go out there just to stand and remember that crazy time when it became the center of an epic battle between me and an authoritarian HOA president. It is a good reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of resistance can lead to significant change. I did eventually put some plants out there in the summer, just to make the space a little less pointless. Nothing fancy, just some hardy perennials that can survive Colorado's climate. Tom jokes that I should get a certification from Summit Access to water them, but I think I will stick to just using a watering can through the sliding door. The community is thriving now. Property values actually went up after Patricia's removal and the financial reforms, despite her warnings that accountability would lead to chaos. Turns out people like living in places with honest leadership and reasonable rules. Who knew? Every now and then, someone new moves into Riverside Pines and hears the story about the rope access deck cleaning. They usually think it is an urban legend until someone shows them the video. It has become part of the community folklore, a reminder of where we have been and how far we have come. The legal fees I recovered from the slap suit went into my savings account, earning interest and waiting for whatever life throws at me next. Hopefully nothing involving HOAs or snow removal, but you never know. At least now I know I can stand up for myself, fight back against unreasonable authority, and maybe even win. If I had to do it all over again, I would not change a thing. Well, maybe I would have started organizing against Patricia sooner, before she managed to steal $47,000 from the community. But the rope access thing, that was perfect. Sometimes you have to fight absurdity with absurdity, and sometimes the best way to show how ridiculous a rule is to follow it so literally and dramatically that everyone can see how insane it was in the first place. Life goes on in Riverside Pines. We have our regular board meetings, our community events, our occasional disagreements about parking and landscaping. But it is all normal now, functional, reasonable. Patricia's reign of petty tyranny is over, her crimes exposed and punished, and the community is stronger for having gone through the struggle together. And whenever it snows, I look at my deck and smile, remembering the day professional climbers rappelled down ropes to clear it just to prove a point. It cost me $500 and sparked a chain of events that ended with an HOA president in prison, but it was worth every penny. That second-story deck might be useless, but it will always hold a special place in my heart. It is where I learned that standing up to bullies matters, that communities can come together to demand accountability, and that sometimes the most effective weapon against unreasonable authority is following their rules so perfectly that everyone can see how ridiculous they are. The snow is falling again outside my window as I write this, already starting to accumulate on my beloved second-story deck. Let it pile high. Let it stay there all winter. No rope access technicians will be needed this year or any year after. That battle has been won, and won decisively. I am Zachary Wilson, and I live in a functional HOA community in Boulder, Colorado, where common sense prevails and leaders are held accountable. It took a fight to get here, but it was a fight worth having. And if another Patricia Henderson ever shows up trying to abuse authority and steal from the community, well, we know how to handle that now. We have been there, done that, and got the viral video to prove it.